welcome viewers to the Personal Injury Law Show. My name's Tony Carbone, personal injury lawyer of many years' experience. Next to me I've got John Carancis.
Good evening, Tony.
Personal injury lawyer of many years as well, John.
Yes, an accredited specialist, Tony.
That's it. And Kathy, young and famous and fabulous and whatever else, like to be famous.
Of course. Good evening, Tony, John, viewers, good evening.
And tonight we're going to be talking about the role of a personal injury lawyer, guys.
But before that, Tony, what's in the news?
Well, John, what's in the news is this tragic case of the school teacher that went out to Torquay, I think it was, and they went scuba diving and he lost his life trying to save a couple of his students.
He drowned. Yeah.
Now, it's pretty tragic because you'd think that if you take your students out and you go out, you'd think it'd be safe because you're going with a professional group of scuba divers that should really make sure that what you do and the conditions on the day are appropriate to do what you're doing.
Well, I'm sure the coroner's report will have a lot to answer for in the sense that why was he out with the children in such, well, in actual fact, perilous conditions, Tony?
Yeah, it was perilous conditions. That's the best way to put it. And Kathy, the family's got claims here. They've got no fault benefits, obviously.
They do. It's a very unfortunate and sad case.
There's no fault benefits. There's a death benefit there, and there's pension benefits for the children
and the wife,
and also Tony common law.
Well, what will happen is this: you've got to make a decision whether it's better to go common law or leave the wife and children on that pension.
Of course.
Yeah. So someone's got to look at it carefully and make a decision for her.
I'd have to say the scuba diving company have probably got a few questions to ask.
Yeah, it's a bit of a worry for him,
and to
isn't
answer.
It? But he died, and it's sad that the family's lost a father and the husband, but it could have also been a couple of students here, and we would have a lot of grieving people.
Tragic situation.
Anyway, let's move on to this role of the personal injury lawyer. Firstly, what do you have to do to become a lawyer, Kathy?
First and foremostly, you have to attend university, generally under an undergraduate degree, but you can also do it postgraduate, and you have to fulfil 3 years of university at least at a minimum, because you have to do core subjects, including constitutional law and property law and commercial or corporate. And then after that, you have to do, what we did is articles of clerkship, but it's now known as practical legal training in Victoria. And then you become admitted as a solicitor and barrister, or an Australian qualified lawyer, that is, in the Supreme Court, which is a beautiful
lot of training,
day.
isn't it, John? I mean, I think we do 20 law subjects, don't we?
It's quite a few years of training, Tony.
I think there's about 20 law subjects.
I think there's about 24, but there's about 11 core subjects that you have to fulfil, and then you can also take electives. So, look, and most people are choosing to do double degrees now as well, generally in commerce and law or arts law.
Well, at Melbourne
Science
University...
law. Absolutely.
At Melbourne University, I understand that you cannot just commence straight out with a law degree. You've
got to do a postgraduate.
It's a postgraduate type of degree.
I think it's known as jurisprudence. Or
that's another one altogether, but the thing is, it's very expensive now. You've got to pay for it. But and you just can't pay it off on the drip, I don't think. But look, let's move on. John, why would you consult a personal injury lawyer as opposed to doing a claim yourself?
Anyone injured at work, in a transport accident, or in a public place, a public liability claim, you need to see a personal injury lawyer to basically receive advice as to your entitlements. It's too dangerous doing it yourself.
It's too complicated, isn't it?
Most lawyers don't know what the system entails.
That's exactly right. It's very, very specialised and very complicated.
It's a specialised and complicated area, particularly in work cover. Tony, there's only a handful of lawyers in Victoria that actually really know the work cover system.
Are specialised.
Exactly.
Yeah, heavily specialised. And look, there's probably only be a handful of lawyers that have been around since the change in the legislation from 85 up until now.
Exactly, yes.
Yeah, so, and that makes it even more specialised and complicated, I guess.
And also, Tony, one thing I've noticed in my experience is the insurers telling the workers, oh no, you can do this claim yourself. You don't need lawyers to get involved. Well, that's wrong.
Well, John, the insurers would like to get out of the claims as cheaply as possible.
Exactly.
Not just that, recently I've had a situation where employers or insurers, to be honest, are actually indicating to clients to keep putting in new claims when it's already been from an
An
accepted
existing claim.
claim.
It's an
And
accepted
the
claim.
reality is that it's a
Yeah.
lawyer's role to actually help you and guide you as to where your rights are better placed, because
Kathy, that becomes very complicated if
It
you're trying to
does.
prove serious injury too, because the more claims you put in, you've got to show
Absolutely.
that each incident has given rise to a serious injury in itself, which is
That's
very, very
right.
complicated.
That's
isn't it,
right.
John?
And usually those further injuries will detract from your major injury.
Can I ask you this, Kathy?
Yes.
What is the first step you do if you get injured? You ring up a lawyer.
well, you would see a doctor, to be honest, Tony, but then
Yeah,
yes,
that's
you
a
would
good point.
you would ring a lawyer, of course, because you need to know what you're entitled to, if you are entitled to anything as well. So, I mean, a lawyer will be able to make an assessment or at least give you some guidance as to what
Well,
to
they
do.
need to guide you in terms of how to better prepare yourself, I guess, in terms
Absolutely.
of what doctors you should see, how you should conduct yourself, whether you should be working, reasonable return to work, alternative work, all sorts of things.
And also what your obligations as a worker, for example, if we're using the work cover system, what your obligations are as well, because it's not just employers that have obligations with the return to work.
John, assuming you saw a new personal injury client and you've kick-started their case, what do you do on a day-to-day basis to prepare this claim? What is it that you collate or put together?
There's a lot of paperwork involved, Tony. There's a lot of obtaining current and up-to-date medical reports, talking to the various witnesses involved, obtaining documentation pursuant to the Freedom of Information Act from the employer, for example, and various related companies
Attending the site and taking photos?
when necessary, and
Getting an
particularly
engineer or some sort of appropriate expert, I guess?
particularly in common law damages claims, exactly, Tony. And also dealing with the insurer at times on a daily basis. A lot of clients, as we know, Tony, they're not getting paid.
That's exactly
I don't know why.
Not just that, they're not getting paid appropriately in accordance with their pre-injury average weekly earnings.
Exactly, yes.
Look, one of the things, as a lawyer, you've got to be careful too, because you're overriding duties to the court.
To the court, Tony.
So,
Well, your
and-
first duty, Tony, is to the court and then to the client.
well, you've got to zealously and actively pursue your client's claim,
Of
but you've got to
course.
pursue it in accordance with the rules of law. You just
But
can't.
no one is above the law. That's what
That's
the rule of
exactly
law
right.
comes down
That's
to.
exactly
And,
right.
and everyone has to be aware that we have ethical duties as well, which are a main part of our position.
That's
so
exactly right. And John, when you talk about preparing this case, at some point in time, do you communicate with the other side, with the defendant lawyers?
We can communicate quite regularly with the defendant lawyers. We want to know what the problem is, why is there an issue, and what we can do to resolve the issue.
John, we'll come back to this. We've got to go to a sponsors break. Viewers, please stay around. Don't go away. We'll be back very shortly. Thank you.